Stop doing this if you want to speak fluent English.
Relaxing English Podcast, the podcast where we explore tips, tricks, and strategies to help you master the English language and mental growth. Welcome back, English learners, to the Relaxing English Podcast. This is episode 29, and today we're going to dive into a topic that might feel a little uncomfortable, but one that's absolutely crucial for your progress. We're talking about the dark side of learning English, toxic habits holding you back. Now you might be thinking, toxic habits? But I'm trying so hard. And I get that. Learning a new language, especially English, is a marathon, not a sprint. It demands dedication, patience, and often a lot of self-correction. But sometimes, without even realizing it, we develop habits that, instead of helping us, actually hinder our progress, subtly sabotaging our efforts. These aren't necessarily obvious grand mistakes, but rather insidious little patterns that chip away at our confidence and keep us stuck. So, let's shine a light on some of these toxic habits, look at real-life examples, and, most importantly, talk about how we can break free from them. Because recognizing the problem is the first most powerful step towards finding a solution. Toxic habit 1, the perfectionism paralysis. Our first toxic habit is one I see so often, and it's particularly prevalent among high achievers. Perfectionism paralysis. This is the belief that unless you can speak or write English perfectly, without a single grammatical error or pronunciation mistake, you shouldn't speak or write at all. It's the fear of making a mistake becoming so overwhelming that it stops you from practicing, from engaging, from putting yourself out there. Think about it. You're in a conversation. You have something to say, but as the words form in your mind, you start to analyze them. Is that the right tense? Is my pronunciation clear enough? What if I use the wrong preposition? And before you know it, the moment has passed. Someone else has spoken, and you've missed your chance. Or perhaps you're writing an email, and you spend an hour on a 2-minute task, constantly revising, deleting, and rewriting, terrified of how your message will be perceived. Example. Let's say you're in an online English class and the teacher asks everyone to share their weekend plans. You've thought about what you want to say. I plan to visit my parents and we will cook together. But then your mind races. Is plan to visit natural, or should it be I'm planning to visit and cook together? Is that too simple? Should I elaborate on the dish? This internal debate leads to hesitation, and by the time you've settled on the perfect phrasing, someone else has already spoken, and you feel embarrassed for not. So you tell yourself, next time I'll be more prepared. But the cycle repeats. The reality is language learning is messy. It's filled with mistakes. Every native speaker you know made thousands of mistakes on their journey to fluency. Babies don't wait until they can perfectly conjugate verbs before they start babbling. They make sounds, they try words, they get it wrong, and through those errors, they learn. When you embrace perfectionism, you're essentially telling yourself that you're not allowed to be a learner. You're demanding fluency before you've even had a chance to practice. This habit creates immense anxiety and, ironically, slows down your progress significantly because you're avoiding the very practice that leads to improvement. Toxic habit 2, the comparison trap. Moving on to our second toxic habit, the comparison trap. This is where you constantly compare your English progress to that of others, your friends, classmates, or even people you see online who seem to have achieved fluency effortlessly. You scroll through social media, see someone confidently speaking English in a video, and suddenly, all your own achievements feel insignificant. You think, they're so much better than me, I'll never get there. This habit is a direct assault on your self-esteem. It ignores your unique learning journey, your starting point, and the effort you've already put in. We all have different backgrounds, different access to resources, different learning styles, and different speeds at which we absorb information. Comparing your Chapter 2 to someone else's Chapter 10 is simply unfair to yourself. Example. Imagine you and a friend both started learning English 6 months ago. Your friend, let's call her Sarah, spent a year living in an English-speaking country before she even began formal lessons, so she has a strong foundation in listening and common phrases. You, on the other hand, are starting from scratch, learning everything from basic grammar. Now, in your shared online class, Sarah picks up new vocabulary much faster and can form complex sentences with ease. You, however, struggle with verb tenses and feel frustrated. Instead of acknowledging Sarah's prior exposure, you tell yourself, Sarah is just naturally better at languages than me. I'm a slow learner. This thought process discourages you from trying harder, and you start to believe that your efforts are futile because you'll never catch up. The comparison trap fosters feelings of inadequacy and resentment. It shifts your focus from your own growth to someone else's perceived success, leading to demotivation and even the desire to quit. Remember, your journey is yours alone. Celebrate your small victories, focus on your own improvement, and use others' success as inspiration, not as a stick to beat yourself with. Everyone's path to fluency is unique, and there's no single finish line. Toxic habit 3, the passive consumption cycle. Our third toxic habit is something many of us are guilty of, often without realizing its detrimental effects. The passive consumption cycle. This is when you spend all your time consuming English content, watching movies, listening to podcasts like this one, reading articles, but you rarely, if ever, actively produce English yourself. You believe that simply immersing yourself in the language will magically lead to fluency. While immersion is incredibly valuable and a necessary part of language learning, it's only half the equation. Think of it like this. You can watch every cooking show in the world, read every cookbook, and understand all the recipes, but you'll never learn to cook until you actually step into the kitchen and start chopping, mixing, and baking. Similarly, you can consume endless amounts of English, but if you're not actively speaking, writing, and practicing, your productive skills will remain underdeveloped. Example. Let's say your daily routine involves watching 2 hours of English Netflix shows, listening to an hour of English music, and reading an English news article. You feel good about this, you're exposed to the language. However, when it comes to speaking in your English conversation group, you freeze up. You can understand what everyone is saying, but you struggle to form coherent sentences. Or, when you need to write an email in English for work, it takes you an exceptionally long time, and you rely heavily on translation tools. You realize that while your listening comprehension has improved, your ability to produce language hasn't kept pace. This habit creates a false sense of security. You feel like you're learning because you understand a lot, but understanding is only one part of true fluency. Without active production, your brain isn't forming the neural pathways necessary for spontaneous speech and writing. You're not practicing recalling vocabulary, constructing sentences on the fly, or articulating your thoughts. It's like filling a cup with water but never drinking from it. The water is there, but you're not getting any nourishment. To truly learn, you need to engage both input and output. You need to listen, read, and speak, and write. Toxic habit 4, the grammar gimmick obsession. Our fourth toxic habit is something that often starts with good intentions, but can quickly spiral into a detrimental pattern. The grammar gimmick obsession. This is the belief that if you just master every single grammar rule, understand every nuance of every tense, and memorize every exception, you'll become fluent. You spend countless hours poring over grammar textbooks, doing endless exercises, and trying to analyze every sentence you hear or read for its grammatical structure, often at the expense of actually communicating. Now let me be clear, grammar is important. It provides the framework for communication, but it's a tool, not the goal itself. Obsessing over every minute grammar rule before you're even comfortable speaking simple sentences can lead to mental overload and prevent natural language acquisition. It's like trying to become a master carpenter by only studying the blueprints of a house without ever picking up a hammer or saw. Example, you're a beginner English learner, and you spend weeks trying to differentiate between the present perfect continuous and the past perfect continuous, meticulously studying their usage and exceptions. You can recite the rules perfectly. However, when asked about your weekend, you still struggle to say, "I went to the market yesterday," because you're too busy internally trying to apply a complex grammar rule that isn't even relevant to a simple past tense statement. You might even find yourself correcting other non-native speakers' minor grammatical errors in your head, while simultaneously struggling to express your own thoughts in a fluid manner. This habit leads to overthinking and self-censorship. You become so focused on grammatical correctness that you lose sight of the primary purpose of language, to communicate effectively. You might be able to identify an irregular verb in a complex sentence, but you can't confidently order coffee. Real-world communication is often about getting your message across, even if it's not grammatically perfect. Native speakers make grammatical errors all the time, both in speech and in informal writing. Focusing solely on grammar can make you rigid, slow down your speech, and ultimately hinder your ability to communicate naturally and spontaneously. Prioritize understanding and being understood, and let the more intricate grammar details solidify over time through practice and exposure. Toxic Habit 5. The tomorrow I'll start syndrome, procrastination. Finally, our fifth toxic habit, and perhaps one of the most common pitfalls, the tomorrow I'll start syndrome, or simply procrastination. This is the habit of constantly putting off your English practice, telling yourself you'll start a more rigorous routine, or watch that English movie, or practice speaking tomorrow, next week, or when I have more time. But tomorrow never truly comes, or when it does, the same excuses reappear. This habit is incredibly insidious because it provides a temporary sense of relief from the perceived burden of learning, but it ultimately leads to stagnation and regret. It's easy to make grand plans for future study, but it's the consistent, small actions taken today that truly lead to progress. Example: you bought a new English textbook with great intentions. You even scheduled an online conversation lesson for Monday. But on Sunday evening, you feel tired and tell yourself, I'll just get a good night's sleep tonight and start fresh with the textbook tomorrow. And maybe I'll reschedule the conversation lesson for Wednesday when I'm less busy. Tuesday rolls around and work is hectic, so you postpone again. By Friday, the textbook is gathering dust and the conversation lesson never happened. You feel a pang of guilt, but quickly rationalize it by saying, next month, I'll really commit. I'll block out time in my calendar. This cycle repeats, and months go by without significant progress, leaving you feeling frustrated with yourself. Procrastination saps your motivation and builds a mental barrier. Each time you postpone, you reinforce the idea that English learning is a chore or something to be avoided. It creates a gap between your aspirations and your actions, leading to self-blame and a lack of momentum. The key to overcoming this is to break down your goals into tiny, manageable steps and to commit to consistent, even if brief, daily practice. 5 minutes of active practice every day is infinitely more effective than planning for 2 hours someday. Just start. Even if it's imperfect, just start. Breaking free, turning toxic habits into healthy practices. So, we've identified these toxic habits. It can be a bit sobering, but the good news is once you recognize them, you're empowered to change them. Let's briefly look at how we can flip these on their head and turn them into healthy, productive practices. For perfectionism paralysis, embrace the motto, progress, not perfection. Understand that mistakes are not failures, they are stepping stones. Actively seek out opportunities to speak and write, even if it's just for a few minutes. Focus on communicating your message, even if it's simple. Celebrate the fact that you spoke or wrote at all. Record yourself speaking and listen back. You'll likely find your mistakes are far less significant than you imagined. For the comparison trap, shift your focus inwards. Compare yourself to yourself, not to others. Track your own progress. Keep a journal of new words you've learned, or record short voice notes of your speaking progress over weeks and months. You'll be amazed at how far you've come. Remember, everyone's journey is unique, and your growth is what truly matters. For the passive consumption cycle, introduce active production into your routine. After watching an English show, try summarizing the plot aloud to yourself or a friend. If you read an article, try writing a short paragraph about what you learned. Find a language exchange partner, join an online conversation group, or even just speak to yourself in English for 5-10 minutes a day. The key is to use the language. For the grammar gimmick obsession, adopt a communicate first, refine later approach. Focus on getting your message across clearly. Learn grammar rules in context as you encounter them through reading and listening, rather than in isolation. Practice using the grammar you've learned in actual sentences. And remember, fluency often means being able to communicate effectively, even with minor grammatical imperfections. For the tomorrow I'll start syndrome, the antidote is consistent action, even tiny steps. Commit to a non-negotiable minimum amount of English practice every day, no matter how small. 5 minutes of reviewing flashcards, 10 minutes of listening to a podcast, or 5 minutes of speaking aloud about your day. Make it so easy to start that you can't say no. Build momentum through consistency, not grand, overwhelming plans. Recognizing and addressing these toxic habits is a profound act of self-awareness and self-compassion. It's about being kind to yourself on this challenging, yet incredibly rewarding journey. Don't let these subtle saboteurs hold you back from achieving your English learning goals. You have the power to change these patterns, and by doing so, you'll unlock a new level of confidence, fluency, and enjoyment in your language learning journey. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Relaxing English Podcast. I hope this discussion has given you some valuable insights and actionable steps. Until next time, keep practicing, keep learning, and remember, every step, no matter how small, moves you forward.